how celebrities have like names for their fans, like Swifties and I can't think of any other ones, but
Conservative.
There you go, conservatives. I would love for Friendeavor fans to have that, but you know what the thing that makes sense is to call them friends.
Right.
So, hey friends, welcome back to Friendeavor.
We're in a first grade classroom. Hey friends.
As you know, Kayla and I are absolutely professional podcasters, and we make no mistakes whatsoever anytime, especially with our sound quality. It's not like half of our episodes have got something wrong with them, but this one is no difference. The first like 15 minutes of this one microphone was louder than the other, and I'm sure you'll be able to figure out which one.
Yeah.
And it was my fault, not hers. So please bear with us. And this episode is really strong, and we have a lot of things in here that we think are going to be helpful and teach you something. So if you could just push through for the first 15-ish minutes.
Yes.
I promise you we figured it out eventually.
Yes, we did. It sounds great. Crystal clear.
Every time we make a mistake, we learn something from it. And you know what? By the end of this, we will be professional podcasters. Welcome to Friendeavor the Podcast, the weekly podcast where we explore the highs and lows of friendship with your hosts, Danielle and Kayla.
As we journey through life, our friendships often evolve and change, ebb and flow, and sometimes even come to an end. Danielle and I are lifelong advocates for the power of friendship, and we are here to guide all of us through the many challenges and joys that come with building and maintaining strong, meaningful connections with those around us.
Join us each week as we deep dive into the intricacies of friendship, from navigating conflicts to fostering new relationships and everything in between. With insightful interviews, personal anecdotes, and expert advice, Friendeavor is the perfect podcast for anyone looking to strengthen their bonds with the people they love.
So, whether you are on the go, taking care of chores, or just settling in, get ready to explore the world of friendship on Friendeavor, the podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Friendeavor, the podcast. I'm your host, Danielle.
Hi, I'm Kayla.
And we are thrilled to be back together again.
Yes, it's great to be back.
It's been a couple weeks since we've been able to be together recording. And how were your events? Were they awesome?
Oh, my word. Yes, very back to back. I'm happy to be home. But yeah, they were very fun. Very insightful. So much fun.
Well, we're glad that you're back. This week we are talking about the role of communication in friendship. And it's something that we have talked about a lot, but it's like something we've touched on a lot. We've not been able to actually go super deep into it.
Yeah, we haven't dedicated a whole episode to this.
Right. And I think it's time that we do that.
Oh, absolutely. It's like the foundation of your friendship.
Absolutely. Yeah. And did you know, Kayla, we also had our very first listener input come in today.
That's so awesome.
So just in time for this episode. And I am thrilled to be able to integrate some of your guys' thoughts and experiences into the podcast, because honestly, what else is friendship for? Other than learning from everyone else.
Right. And we want our content to be relevant too. So getting your guys' input is really important so we can produce what you guys want to see.
Yeah, and you can give us that input however you want. Like, we
DM,
do have the
email. Yeah.
But the DM, if you want to send a voice message for us to listen to, if you want to put a voice message in to be added to the podcast, just let us know how you want to be integrated, and we would love to hear your thoughts. But that'll be for a little bit later in the episode, but for now, let's dive into the role of communication.
Yes.
I also don't want to limit us to like thinking of a role as in just the job. We're also going to be giving examples of communication, and we're kicking it off with the first one, which is active listening. This is not really a job of communication, if that makes sense. It's more of your responsibility as the one communicating or being communicated to. So being an active listener is a crucial aspect of communication and friendship. Why? It involves paying full attention. Kayla and I can't have this podcast right now if we're not listening to each other talk. How are we supposed to chime in on what the other one is saying or have a conversation about something if we're just looking at our own thing or thinking about our own thing or just waiting for our turn to talk?
Right.
We got to pay attention to each other. So that's just one active example right now, but you also have to pay attention to your friends, understanding the message and responding appropriately, which shows that you value and respect their opinion.
Right. Yeah. I work for Dear Young Married Couple, and I've been with them to a couple of their events, and they always have a volunteer couple come up and do this exercise with them, and they'll like guide them through it. And so they'll ask the couple who wants to be the speaker and who wants to be the listener. Well, I mean, anyone who's asked that would probably think the listener is the easier one because the speaker's being vulnerable and all that. And so whenever...
Has to think on the fly.
Yes. So whenever they say listener, Adam's like, hey, that's the harder one, right? Because as a listener, if you're being an active listener, then you have to show the person that you're engaging in conversation, but you can't be completely silent, or they don't know that, you're really comprehending what they're saying, but you can't interrupt them. I mean, I am very picky about that. My husband probably goes crazy because I don't like when he interrupts me when I'm talking to let me know that he's listening, because I'm like, hey, let me finish. But I also don't like when he sits there and says nothing, because I'm like, how do I know that you know what I'm talking about? Right. So there's this idea of audible listening, and it like goes into active listening, but it's like just saying a okay or a mm-hmm while the person's talking, and it lets them know you're listening, but you're not interrupting them, but they're like, okay, they're with me. So.
Look at me audibly listening right now in this microphone. I'm like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Who knew I was so good at being an audible listener?
Right.
No, that's awesome. That is definitely a key part, because if I was pouring out my heart to my friend and they were just staring at me like they had never seen me before, I would probably be super self-conscious about it. Like, did I go too far? Am I not making myself clear? Am I making, what I'm saying clear? Or am I way off base?
Yeah.
And those are all valid concerns that can get really tough to navigate if you are not getting the response that you are needing to maybe not even affirm what you're saying, because if you're saying something that's off base, I would not expect someone to affirm what I was saying, but just to like, okay, I hear you, but, and then like giving space for a fluid conversation.
Exactly. That's why the role of the listener in this exercise is to also essentially repeat back to the person what they just said. And it does not have to be verbatim. And in fact, it shouldn't be verbatim. So, if Danielle told me, hey, Kayla, I would really love if you would stop being late to our recordings, I would not interrupt her. As an active listener, I would not interrupt her and be like, you would love if I would stop being late to your recordings. No, I would say, okay, you would love if I valued both of our times and I was punctual because, and that's important, because because your time is valuable, and because you don't want to stay up late doing other things, because I was 10-15 minutes late to our recording, so then you sat there for 10-15 minutes not listening, right? So that's the role of being an active listener is actually sometimes harder than the role of being the speaker.
Proving that you understand what they're saying. I was not expecting to spend this much time on this one, but I'm really glad we are, because it's so important. Yeah. And we have a lot more to get into. And hey, this might end up being a two-parter. We don't know. But there is actually a standard in academia for elementary school students. And I believe it's either a first or second grade skill that a student is able to hear a story audibly told to them. So not read. There is room for that as well. But in this instance, audibly read or audibly told to them, like orally, and they have to be able to retell it to the person who told it to them. And if they can do it with a certain amount of accuracy, then they possess that skill. If they can't, in extreme cases, they are literally eligible for special education services.
Oh, wow.
Because the skill is that important. Can you comprehend what I'm saying and repeat it back to me? Because once you are able to, I mean, that's what the levels of degrees are, right? An associate's is like you have basic knowledge. A bachelor is you have understanding in that field, a specific field. A master's is proficiency in that field, and you're able to teach others based off of what you learned about that field. And a doctorate is when you contribute to that field. Okay, so each one of these levels, you have to be able to comprehend what you're learning and be able to, in turn, give it back on some level. Yeah. So that if someone is having a serious or even a fun conversation with you, it doesn't always have to be, communication doesn't always have to be like dragging it out. Like, I feel like a lot of times when we talk about communication, we're talking about serious things.
And conflict, yeah.
But it also is just did you hear the funny story that I was saying, or were you waiting to tell your own funny story? And so if you're able to tag in on the joke, and we have a whole extra section about jokes in here too, the role of jokes, or role of communication and humor, which we're going to get into. But if you are audibly giving me signs, and we're bouncing all around what we're already talking about, we're going to talk about, but hey, it's fluid, I love it. If you can retell what I'm saying to you right now, then you have proven to me that you can understand what I'm saying. Even this tagging off of each other about this specific concept is proving that we're listening to each other.
Right.
Which hopefully provides a good listening experience for our audience. Yes. But also, we got a little bit of, the talking point, and then we have our own experience, and we're volleying back and forth. And so we are proving to each other that we know how to actually use the skill, which I think is pretty cool.
Effective communication is respect for boundaries. And this can be a tricky one because often it's a learned skill. Either, you don't have to seek out and go learn it. Some people, they just learn it because their parents were really good at it and it was modeled for them. And other people have to go out and seek resources to learn how to set boundaries and how to communicate boundaries and how to respect other people's boundaries without getting offended by it. And there are just so many layers to this, but it's really important for communication in your friendship because a lot of resentment can build up if the boundary is not communicated, and therefore it is crossed over and over because it wasn't communicated.
Right.
And then it's frustrating if it was communicated and crossed over and over. So respect for boundaries is it's huge. And we've done an episode solely on this because it's just so important.
It is super important. Now, I don't really like this term, but it fits what we're talking about. To play devil's advocate, or basically to look at it from the other angle, because this is something that I've thought of quite often. What if you are getting expressed a boundary to, and I genuinely want to know what you think about this. If someone is trying to share with me a boundary, because I'll use myself as an example because that's the best way to make it not be offensive to anyone. And I'm sitting here and thinking, that is ridiculous. That is a ludicrous boundary, and that is, if it's not self-righteous, it's just ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think about that? Because it's technically their healthy boundary, but if it doesn't jive with me, where does that leave me as their friend? And it's not like we're not talking something serious. Because if you have a problem with a serious boundary, then that's something you need to work through on your own. But I mean, what do you think about that?
I think everyone has their own personal limits. So even if it's not super serious to someone, it may be serious to the other party. Can you give a specific example of something ridiculous?
Like, say that there is a game. Like, say you're at a party. Just a general, fun party. And someone makes a big old stink about how they're not going to play that game because I have a boundary. And when people specifically use words like telling you that they have a boundary, instead of just setting it for this, it's the self-righteous aspect for me. Like, if you're in there like, I'm not going to do that. Okay, then just don't do it.
Right.
You don't have to be, or vice versa. If someone's pushing you to do it, but you have a boundary and you're just like, no, thank you. I don't know. It's just, you understand what I'm saying? Like, there could be ridiculousness on either side.
Right. Yeah. I think we've talked about this before, but there are times when a boundary needs to be communicated and times where it doesn't. And I think it depends on the severity of the boundary and the people. If it's your best friend and it's like, hey, every time we have a game night, you always want to bust out this game and I don't feel comfortable playing this game. I don't like the content. I don't like the vulnerability in this game. Then that might be something you need to communicate. But if it's like a random game night like the one we have every fall and it's not your best friend and it's an acquaintance and it's an annual get together, then just don't play the game. And just don't talk about it.
Purposefully trying to make other people feel bad or exalt yourself because of it, like, no, there are, and we're using games as an example, but it literally can go with any boundary. There's things that I won't play because I don't like the content, and like, I'm not judging you for playing it, but don't expect me to. So then I just go and play something else.
Yeah. Hey, I'm just gonna sit this one out, guys.
Yeah, but if you're making a big old thing, drawing attention to yourself, causing conflict in the gathering, then you really need to check where you're coming from on that. Is it really a protection of your boundary, or is it a self-exaltation thing?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just something that bothers me. And it doesn't happen a lot. And the game night thing is, like I said, just one teeny tiny example of that. And I can't even think of a real life example.
Right.
Honestly. But even if you're in a ministry with other people and they want to do something, some activity or something like that. And I've heard of people going off the rails in meetings, telling people that they're so out of line and blah, 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 because that's a boundary they have for themselves. You know, let's use Disneyland, for example, or Disney in general. If you don't do Disney, then don't do Disney.
Right.
Disneyland, Disney parks, whatever. But if other people do, don't tell them that they're going to hell in a handbasket because they do something that you don't.
Well, that's like any conviction. That's not preach over the pulpit.
Right.
You know, it's just, mind your business.
Mind your business. I tell my kids all the time, the only person you need to be in charge of is yourself.
Yeah.
So, like, unless, obviously.
If you have kids. Yeah.
But, you know, from the standpoint of this, what we're talking about is if you can't communicate this boundary respectfully, because this topic on our talk sheet right now says respect for boundaries, respectfully having a boundary for yourself and respecting the fact that other people have one and communicating that in a way that's healthy. Because
right.
I mean, in all things we talk about the general nature of it, that your friendship pyramid is gonna, you mentioned, you know, if it was a best friend or something, then it would be different. But if it was a group, like, you just gotta be careful what you say.
Right. I think kind of tagging back to the idea of respecting boundaries, but, you know, what if they're absolutely ridiculous? Yes, it does depend on the person. So random person communicates a ridiculous boundary, I think that's just kind of something you shake off. But if it's like a best friend and you want to respect their boundaries,
which you
I
should.
mean, yes.
You should want to.
But you think it's also ridiculous, that's a difficult situation. So I think there you might just say, hey, I want to respect what you're saying and I'm not, you know, undermining it at all, but are you open to influence to for your way of thinking?
Or can you help me understand where you're coming from?
Yeah.
Because some people just lay out their thoughts without explaining it. And if you want people to be in your corner about it, you got to help them understand.
Right.
So in this instance, specifically when it comes to boundaries, if you have one and you're going to advertise that you have one, I think that's the difference too. If you have one and you just have one, that's fine. Yeah. If you're going to advertise that you have one and expect people to, your close friends to keep it, then you need to tell them why.
Yeah.
That's just...
I think, I mean, anytime you advertise your boundary, you've got to say why. This is what happens for me when this happens. Yeah. Internally, you know. Was it last year? I think it was last year.
Maybe the year before. Your sister, Carissa, was here. I don't even know how this happened. She came over. It wasn't a game night or anything. It was like Karina was here, and then Carissa was here, and we were hanging out.
Was I here?
I think you were here, but then you and Brett left, and then Carissa and Karina left, but Carissa was here by herself. And we ended up staying up until like 5 a.m.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so you were here, but then, okay. So we ended up staying up until like 5 or 6 a.m. talking, and she was helping me understand, like, I was telling her about a certain boundary that I had for myself, and, you know, just in being a good friend, we were talking it through, right? And she helped me understand that people may not judge me as hard as I think they will for having a boundary, as long as I express to them why. It's not that people deserve to know your business as it is, but it's like, if you expect them to respect it without it being weird, then be like, you know, just give them a little bit, you know, help them understand. And so she, like any good friend / mentor would do, gives you a little bit of perspective.
Right.
which is what you need. And in doing so, she was teaching me how to be a better communicator.
That's great.
So
I think you also have to consider the setting there too. Like, you guys one-on-one at 5 a.m. in your home, like, is a great time for her to be like, let me offer a different perspective. But like, then on the flip side, in a group setting, when someone communicates, I'm not gonna engage in that, then don't go offer a different perspective right then and there in front of everybody. Like, why?
Yeah.
Oh, well, don't you know it's like this? It's just this.
Or
like,
or trying to talk them out of their boundaries.
Right. Talk. That is not the time to talk them out of it.
Right. That's a good point. And this leads us actually right into our next talking point for this episode. The next point that we have about communication, like we said, that goes hand in hand with respecting boundaries, is adaptability. So friends have different communication styles.
For sure.
I think kind of early on, actually, we did a breakdown of different types of communication. Maybe it was for the long distance friend one or something. I can't remember. But this one is more so styles and preferences. I have a long distance friend, who hates texting. Well, I pretty much only like texting. I mean, not exclusively, but no. I'm not gonna, I guess, in compared to apps like Marco Polo, like I do not like that app. I think I would, but I'm too cheap to come off of the $60 a year or whatever to be able to 2 times speed it. And I have got to listen to things faster. Like,
that's $60 a year.
It's $60 a year. And so I listen to all my audiobooks at like 1.5 speed or above, because I cannot hear like the slow talk. It seems like it's going at a snail's pace. So all that to say, getting off track a little bit, preferences. She would prefer to just drop a video chat every once in a while. And I get the concept, but I also am like, I would have to like watch my car, or like, have it mounted on my car while I'm driving or something, because I can't take in the information that way. And then I feel like I'm doing her a disservice if I'm not, matching word for word, like whatever she says. And so the style and the preference is different. However, I use that app sometimes because she likes it. And she texts me sometimes because I like it. And so the adaptability is key to making sure that you both are getting. It's like the give and take, right? It allows for that smoother interaction. Now you might think, well, you guys are working on 2 different platforms, so how is that smooth? Well, it's the preferential smoothness that is a factor here. And it's important to be open to different ways of expressing thoughts and emotions to accommodate each other's comfort level. What would solve this problem? Probably like an hour FaceTime once a month, because then it's live and it's interaction, and then I'm actually focused on it, and she's got the video aspect without having to text. And it's like, the limited interaction where it's not like, oh, I forgot, it's been 3 days and I forgot to, do it, send her a message back. And then I feel like you can actually have conversation in that. So have we gotten around to that? No, because she's a married mother of 3 with another one on the way. So it's like, no, we don't. And I've got things that I have to do basically all the time. And then with No Limits coming up, it's even more, it seems like. So adaptability is being okay not talking to each other as often, but utilizing each other's preferences when the situation allows.
Exactly. Yeah. I think there needs to be like an underlying, a desire to connect. And if you feel like there is no desire to connect from your friend, first of all, you need to consider, do they just have a different communication style? And then if you assess that and you determine they just have a different communication style, they still desire to connect, then that's great. But if you determine, oh, I'm seeing like no effort and there's no desire to connect, then that merits a conversation. My friends, I like texting too. I mean, if I think of something throughout the week, I'm going to text it on our group chat, because I am going to forget by Sunday when we see each other at church. I'm going to forget. My friends would rather send, a few words in a text rather than a whole paragraph, but then they would rather like stay up until 2 a.m. Sunday night after church, just like talking about their week and going to Dutch Bros, getting energy drinks. And I don't prefer that, but like I do that sometimes, and then sometimes they have long conversations with me over text. So but we both have a desire to connect, and it's not one person putting in more effort than the other. It's just different styles.
Yeah. A little side hack for you that you probably have thought of, but I don't know if you have. What we have, as far as like we forget by Sunday, we have a running conversation shared note, and we all add stuff to it throughout the week. Like,
so good.
we see something going down, and we're like adding it to the list. This last Sunday, we hadn't seen each other in like 2 weeks, like 2.5 weeks.
Oh my word!
There was like 8 conversation topics, and we went to
Texas
dinner.
Roadhouse.
No, we didn't. We went to Chicago Fire that night because we never get to go there after church because they always close. They close at like 9 or something, and we can never get out by that time. But so we went to Chicago Fire on Saturday, went through the entire list, went out again on Sunday, and had even more on there. So,
that's so
like,
great.
If you, that just is what works for us. So if you get a note, we call it the Sisterhood Convo List. It's bullet points, and then we just check it off as we go through it.
Yes.
And the only problem is that Abby put something on there on January 9th and then forgot what it was.
Oh my word.
That's the first time it's happened.
So you got to get specific with what it is, but not too specific.
Given the situation, that's not terribly surprising, but it was funny because we're like, wait, who put this on there? And they're like, we're all like, no, not me. I was like, no, I didn't. Kara's like, no, I didn't. And I go and swipe over, like, because you know how you can see the edits.
And it was Abby.
Abby. And I'm like, Abby, it was you. She was like, oh, I forgot what that was.
That's so great.
So it does work, but you gotta use it in a timely manner. But adaptability of staying up and doing that versus texting, all that stuff. You got to do what works for your group.
Yeah.
And you guys got to all be willing to shake it up from time to time to suit everyone's needs. We're gonna take a little bit more of a breakdown into nonverbal communication at this point. Communication, when you think of it, you think of like talking, and in our context, a lot of times it's talking about our feelings, but there's an element of nonverbal communication, and it kind of has to do with the active listening thing. But there's a little bit more to it. Do you want to walk us through that?
Yeah. So, it goes beyond words. Some nonverbal cues are facial expressions, body language, gestures. They play a huge, significant role in communication. And, like, if you know your friends well enough, then you can pick up on these, you know? Or if you are well-versed in body cues, like, I was talking to my sister the other day, Carissa, and, you know, she's a marriage and family therapist and all that. So she's trained to read these things. We were talking about something, and she could tell that I was just zoned out, and I was just thinking about something that was really heavy on me. But, like, I thought I was doing a pretty good job at, like, you know, keeping it together. She saw my jaw clench. She goes, your jaw just clenched. And I was like, okay.
Like, what are you, an author?
Right.
Her jaw clenched.
Yes. I was like, okay. She goes, so what's on your mind? And I'm like, oh my word. How? Like, I did have some pretty heavy stuff in my mind. And I guess my jaw clenched and she picked up on it. So, yeah, if you are trained to know that kind of stuff, but even if you just know your friends' behaviors, then you can pick up on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's crazy. I wonder what nonverbal cues she would have seen in me when I was walking up the patio the other day and in such deep thought, and I went to step on our front step and my ankle gave out underneath me.
Okay, we need to post that on Friendeavor.
We should. Okay. I will send it to you, or you can put it from the reel, whatever you want to do.
So great.
You could do it to advertise this episode. Did you see? Look at the scar on my knee.
Oh my word.
Yeah, and that's better.
Still there. I know.
Yeah. Anyways, I was in very deep thought when I took that tumble, and then all those thoughts just went straight out of my head. So the nonverbal cues there were me splattered across the pavement. But you know, it was not splattered.
Your coffee.
My coffee.
It was on your nose, though.
It was on it splashed out of the drink hole and went straight out my nose.
Oh, my word.
Anyways, if you have not seen that, we will put it on Friendeavor, but it's also on my Instagram, and it's hilarious. Yeah. I mean, it happened to me, and my body hurt for like 3 days, but I still, every time I looked at that reel, I was like, because it's hilarious.
I was on a company trip when I received that. And so I let all my coworkers see it. Just by the way, yeah, before it was posted. They got behind the scenes content.
That is hysterical. Kristen was probably like, oh.
Yeah. And then Adam was like, the fact that she immediately knew to look at the ring and like start talking to it.
That's my job.
I know.
Oh, no, I knew it was like on my way down. I was like, oh, I hope the ring is dead, because I kept getting notifications that it needed to be charged, and I was like, oh, maybe it's dead. And so I go and look up at it, and I see the red lights all around it that show it's on, and I'm like, I just knew. And then so my hand was all scratched up. I had dirt, like I still have a divot in my hand right here.
Oh my word.
And my shoulder, okay, I was a mess, but went inside and pulled that footage immediately and started dying laughing the second. And then I sent it to you guys.
Oh, I was dying. We rewatched it like 5 times in a row. And then after that too. But yeah. Oh my
No, I've got that saved for when I need it, which is yeah. So I don't know where nonverbal cues.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I was in deep thought and took a tumble. But going back to your friend seeing it, I can see if something that I'm saying that I am passionate about, but my friends are not, or they disagree with me, I can see that on their faces. And I try to open up like, okay, what do you guys think? Like, I genuinely want to know, but I also want to know why they don't agree with me or why they think differently, because perspective is everything. And then I can also see when they're like, you know, I gotta add to this, like I'm gunning for it, to understand either that they're on board or they're not on board, or this is an area that needs more communication right now. So moving into, actually that was our only nonverbal thing. Now we're gonna move back into verbal things. And this is where we get to go into our listener contribution. Yay! We should put a sting in there for that if we have one. I just dropped my phone down my chair. Oh, there it goes again. Oh, it's still going.
It just went deeper.
Oh, okay, got it out. Consistent check-ins. All right, this goes for distance friends, local friends, friends that you even live with. If you your sister, you gotta check in with them.
Your spouse.
Your spouse. Every level of the friendship pyramid needs some sort of check-in, and I would say even an acquaintance, because if you go to a conference, and I always use a conference as an example for the acquaintance thing because it's relatable. That's mostly who my acquaintances are. Yeah. If I see them at conference A that year, say conference A is in March and the next one is in July, but I see them at the second conference in July, but I don't say anything to them, that's a little bit rude. Yeah. If I have a chance to interact with them and check in on them, even if I don't have a super close relationship with them, I still have an instance to interact with them. Yeah. So consistent check-ins to what is appropriate to your level of the friendship pyramid helps maintain a strength in that tier. Okay. It could be the quick check-in, like we said. It could be the in-depth weekly Sunday night rant check-in. But you got to keep those lines open. So for example, I just had my first evaluation at work as a teacher. It's something that every teacher has to do, but I just had my first one and it was kind of a big deal. And I did really well on it. And so I text my student teacher from last year, who I had not spoken to since I got my job offer, but I wanted to keep those lines open. Yeah, that's great. I don't need anything from her, but I feel like it's kind of dumb to close off people that you've had a chance to meet and interact with, right? So I texted her and I was like, hey, just had my first eval. I did really well on it, and that's largely in part thanks to you. Thanks for taking on a student teacher, right? And she texted me back immediately and said, hey, I was just thinking of you this morning. I'm so glad you checked in. So like I had a real life example of someone who I would consider honestly an acquaintance at this point. Like we were coworkers, but we don't have any sort of regular interaction now. But I wanted to keep that line of communication open and available for when either she needs it or when I need it. It just demonstrates that you care, like, and that you're considering them. I could have just have gone the rest of my life and never talked to that woman again. Yeah, I could have, but I thought I when I got that eval feedback, I was like, I learned a lot from her, and I think that she would probably like to know that, and so I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm going to be considerate right now. But that's, essentially what it was.
Right.
A simple message, a simple call. It just shows that you are thinking of them.
Right.
A girl from my past, like super long time ago, started following me on Instagram, and I was literally thinking of her like the day before. And so when she followed me, I was like, oh my gosh. I DM'd her immediately and was like, I was just thinking of you yesterday.
Yeah.
To show her that, hey, I still remember you. This is not just, this is from like probably 15 years ago.
Wow.
And I just shot her the message to reopen that line of communication and be
and
like,
that can feel weird at first. Like, is this going to be weird?
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, I mean, it's, staying connected.
But what's the risk?
Yeah.
Yeah. She wouldn't have followed me if it had been like she didn't want to talk to me or whatever. So it just provides, and it really provides a chance for people to share their thoughts and feelings on a subject. So I have okay, can I be vulnerable for a second? Can I?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I thought you said I'm going to.
I have a pet peeve about two-way communication.
Okay.
Do not tell me that I don't reach out enough if you're never reaching out to me.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like, you might think, oh, well, she doesn't want to talk to me. How do you know that I don't think that about you?
Yeah, right.
Obviously, I need to be the mature one here, but why would you say, oh, I never hear from you when I never hear from you? This is a two-way street. I don't care what level of the pyramid you're on.
Yeah.
You gotta be, you know how I know that you want to hear from me? Because you reached out, And so if there's, I don't know. What do you want?
Yeah. I have someone who like consistently comes up to me at church and says, you don't talk to me anymore. And I'm like, girl, you don't walk up to me. Like, I mean, it's sad. And I do talk to her in passing. But yeah, consistently says that to me. I'm like, well, then walk up to me too. And it's not even someone who's like, we weren't ever best friends or anything. So.
And you know what that shows? That shows that you would like some attention from me. I can't carve out extra time to give you if I don't know that that's something that you need from me, right? That's part of the communication aspect. Now, if you're just being needy and whiny and weird, then first of all, consider, why do I need validation and consideration from this person in the first place? Yeah. But that leads me to my next point, that there's a difference between a check-in and making time for a quality connection. It's just quality communication. It involves spending quality time.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Whether it's in person or if your situation requires virtually or whatever it means, dedicating meaningful time to connect allows friends to create lasting memories and strengthen their bond.
Yeah. And both are important. Both the quick check-ins and making time for quality connection. Because how are you going to have that quality connection if you like never checked in about this and now it's been so long and they're like, oh, I need to rewind and update you on that before I can update you on this. Yeah. Which that could have been saved with the check-ins. You also can't just do the check-ins without the quality connection, because how do you know what you're checking in about?
Right.
I have a friend that's like going through something pretty rough right now, and we throughout the week, hey, how did this next step go? And how did this conversation go? And then we try to like get together weekly to just kind of have a heart to heart,
to have that quality time.
Yeah.
The connection that you need. Yeah. Regular instances of quality time also, and this is where we're getting into our listener input, helps to avoid unnecessary conflict or resolve misunderstandings. If you're checking in, if you have a habit of checking in with someone, let's just slap a time frame on it, every Monday or every Sunday night, like we were talking about earlier. If one of those gets missed, you're going to notice, right? So if you already have a regular routine set up, when misunderstandings or conflicts arise that you didn't really see coming, you will be able to pick up on them easier. So, misunderstandings can occur in any relationship, but communicating them promptly resolves them. So, the listener, who, thank you so much for contributing to the podcast. You're our first listener contribution, and we appreciate it. I'm going to tell you a story that she told me, and I want to hear what you think.
Okay.
So the listener, who we will call Sally's best friend when they were, it wasn't like when they were kids, but it wasn't when they were adults. It was like teenager-ish kind of time. Sally's best friend has a girl come up to her and tell her something about Sally. Okay, we're going to have Susie be the best friend, okay? So some girl tells Susie that Sally had been talking about her and had said something about her. And instead of going to Sally, Susie just brews on it. Stops talking to Sally. Doesn't cut her out of her life, but acts weird around her and is not being herself. And instead of addressing it and like, well, firstly, she didn't even give her the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. Okay?
Instead of going to Sally and trying to figure it out, they avoided her, acted weird around her for weeks. And this simple act of communication, a simple, like one little question, one little hangout, one little instance of check-in would have resolved that situation in an instant.
Yeah.
And the listener said, she's like, yeah, it was weird because we had this going on. We were best friends. Like, you couldn't get tighter than us. And it was her weird behavior that made me realize something was wrong.
Yeah.
But I didn't really have the courage to address it. And so once we finally did, it was resolved almost instantly and it was over with. But in the meantime, our friendship was affected because of a lack of communication.
Well, and that's broken trust too.
Yeah.
Like, now I'm going to feel weird because I can't trust you to tell me when something's wrong. And you obviously don't trust me.
Yeah. So. It's the benefit of the doubt thing that really bothers me.
Yeah.
That bothered me about this. If Susie just automatically assumed that Sally did say that, first of all, I know Sally personally, this person who wrote in. And if this was some sort of thing that she had back in the day, you would never see it now. This is not who this is. And she didn't even, the friend didn't even like say, oh, I don't think she said that to me. Because if I heard that about one of my friends, you best believe I would have been like, knocking on her door that night and like, dude, what is this?
Yeah.
Because
like,
even if
what was misunderstood,
and they could explain it. Because I think she said that it wasn't something that she had not said, it was something that was taken out of context. So the troublemaker came up to the best friend and like reworded something she had said that made it not, look bad or whatever. So that also gives you a chance when conflict is resolved through communication. It gives you a chance for apologizing, for forgiveness. No friendship is without its challenges. No relationship is without its challenges. Right. And sometimes mistakes happen. And effective communication allows friends to apologize when necessary and to forgive and to foster a culture of that understanding, the growth that you want to see. You want to see growth in your friendship. If you're just all roses and flowers all the time, you're probably not seeing growth because it's just like happiness all the time. If that is, and you guys are fine with that, that's awesome. But if you have any sort of like depth to it, or just life in general, you're gonna see conflicts happen.
And when they do and you realize you're in the wrong, you have to take your pride off and seek forgiveness and apologize. I heard this recently, I think in a podcast, that David, when he had all these transgressions, Bathsheba and Uriah, and then Nathan comes and tells him this parable with the sheep, and David says, oh, that man's gotta die. And it's like, that's, that was the pride. And he goes, yo, this man is you. Yeah. This man's you. He just kind of put a mirror in front of his face. Then, the whole Psalm 51 was David's, seeking forgiveness and apologizing. And he has all the elements of a beautiful apology. It's like humility, understanding that you were in the wrong, not placing the blame on anyone else, not blaming Bathsheba, not blaming his dad, Jesse, for, overlooking him.
He raised me that way, so therefore I blaming his nature or blaming his nurture versus what he is allowed himself to become.
Right. Yeah. And there probably was an element of that, but he didn't blame. He was humble and he, sought forgiveness.
Yeah.
So you got to take your pride off.
It's so good. There's so many amazing elements to communication that we could go on. We could spend hours talking about this, and you and I could just spend hours talking together in general. But specifically for communication, and specifically so we don't bore our audience, there's 2 more that we want to address. And the first one being humor. And if you recall back to the survey episode, humor was one of the traits that was like in the top 10, I believe, of what people look for in a friend. So the role of humor in a communication, you do not need to be a stand-up comedian. In fact, you might not be taken as seriously if you're 100% cracking jokes all the time. But a shared joke, a shared humorous experience it's so powerful.
Yeah, it is.
It's such a powerful element in friendship, in inside jokes and the ability to share laughter. It really just contributes to a positive and enjoyable communication style. I mean, I cannot talk to my sister without 450 Odyssey quotes.
Oh,
I mean,
100%,
the episode that she shot in here with me, like they heard them first, and they're hilarious. Yes. And the sisterhood, me and my friends, we can't. You would be astounded if you just were like a fly on the wall. How many repeated jokes make us cackle every time. We do not have new material. We recycle the same stuff, and you would think that we think we're the funniest people on the planet.
But in different contexts, it's so funny how like one joke can be like applied. It's
so true.
And when you're in a group of people and you're not in on the inside joke, those people are so annoying when you're not one of them.
Have you ever seen that?
Oh, they keep laughing and I have no idea what they're laughing about.
Have you ever seen that like reel, or it's like a meme or something, of that guy who's like, I love inside jokes. I hope to be a part of one someday.
Oh my God, I think I've seen that. Yes.
That made me laugh. It made me feel bad for that guy, but it also made me laugh. So it's twofold, because first of all, you have to understand, like, they have their jokes or whatever.
Yeah.
But if they're purposely trying to exclude you because they keep going off the same inside joke, that's not them being considerate of their environment. Yeah. But right. For the friend group, an inside joke will go, honestly, if it's good enough, it'll last for years, and I can tell you we have plenty. But it can also remember that one episode we were shooting, and Abby sent me that meme about the nut house, and I couldn't get it together. Honestly, if I thought about it too hard right now, I would lose it again. But that's an example of, she knew her audience. She knew. If she had put that on her story or something, people would have been like, you're an idiot. She sent it to us, and we hee-hawed for, I mean, it's been months and I'm still laughing about it. So she knew her audience. But humor can lighten the mood and like ease the tension. Yeah. And obviously all these communication styles strengthen the bond between friends, but it's the element of, you don't have to be in the mully grubs all the time.
No.
I know friend groups that they're constant drama, they're constant fighting, they're constantly working through something. It's kind of like the person who always every single week goes and prays through, like they're not growing from it. They're in this cycle. Well, friend groups often get into cycles too, where they cannot shake the bondage. It really is bondage of the mully grubs. And so, and then there's, on the other hand, there's some groups that are only humor with no depth.
Yeah.
So having a healthy humor, on, I don't want to say like example, because it's so subjective, but a joke, or just being able to have fun with each other, that has probably strengthened our bond more than any conversation ever would.
Well, and there's like science behind it, which I don't know all the terminology, but like when they say laughter is medicine for the soul, it's like actual chemicals, the release of
endorphins.
Yes. Like, that's why laughing can like give you kind of like a high sometimes. Like and you just can't stop laughing. Yeah. Like, and then when you share, yeah. Oh, I know. But then when you share that with someone else, like it's so powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's even funnier is like, so we've been friends for so long, me and these girls, that sometimes it's hard to get like them to laugh like that. It's not like, first of all, I'm not trying that hard. But because we know each other so well, we can see the joke coming from a mile away.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're able to drop something on them that they're not expecting, you get this rush. I did it. That happened Sunday night at Chevy's. I can't even remember what it was now, but I just remember they all were howling, and I'm like, listen, this is the life. This is what people, when they look at us, they, in that context, they'd be like, you guys are so weird.
Yeah.
But the bond that it creates is what people look for and they want in their own friendships. And I'm so grateful for that. I do not take it for granted. But humor, jokes, ongoing running jokes and joint references and stuff like that. It can't be replicated in any other context.
Yeah.
All right. We got one last element of effective communication, the role of communication. And I want Kayla to take off on this one because it's encouragement and motivation and communication. And I've never met any family, I've never met an individual, let alone a family, that exemplifies the encouragement and motivation aspect of communication more than Kayla's family. I don't know where it stems from. I mean, maybe you can go into that. I don't know. Yeah. But before I even throw it over to her, I had an experience yesterday where I ran into your sister and I told her, I was like, hey, I wanted to tell you this thing that just happened to me. And she's like a mentor, so it's not like I'm just, telling her random stuff to tell her this. Mm-hmm. But she was so happy for me because she knew that's something that I had been working toward, the thing that I shared with her. And we just ran into each other in the sanctuary. I was going to put my robe on. She was going to a Sunday school meeting. But in a 3-4 minute conversation, we were able to connect, and I was able to experience yet again the Horton encouragement and motivation that you are so blessed to have someone in your life who can do that for you. And the fact that I have a sister-in-law and mentors and friends who are like that is just unbelievable. So Kayla, I want you to wrap us up with the encouragement and motivation aspect of communication and friendship.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's super important. And I think, from my family, where that stems from is my mom was a stay-at-home mom, but she worked from home. She had a daycare, but she was with us all the time. And so her primary job and her whole, day in, day out was to be a mom. And so everything was just done to the extreme. Breakfast, everything was celebrated as well. So first day of school was a big production. Like, she got up early, curled all of our hair.
What about the birthdays?
Birthdays. Yes. Breakfast in bed, all of it. But yeah, first day of school, especially, just made sure that we had matching backpacks and lunch pails and thermoses, and that our thermoses were full, and that there was a note in our lunch that talked about something encouraging. And just we had it all the time, and everything was celebrated, and we take pictures and videos before school, on the way to school, on the way home from school. So I think we got a lot of that from our mom. Just everything was big, everything was celebrated. And so now we all carry that into our adult lives. But I think it's important in friendships, because I think we can just be going through the daily grind and feeling like, we all have big goals, but sometimes when you just have a couple weeks that are exactly the same, and day in, day out, you're just working and all this stuff,
you're in a rut.
Yeah, you need a word of encouragement. And this just happened to me today. I had just had a long work weekend, and I just 12-hour days every day. It was a blast, but it was a lot. And so I was just feeling super burnt out this morning, and I slept in and all this, but I woke up to so many texts on my family group thread, and my sister who's also my boss, was like, I just have to brag on Kayla for a second, sent this whole paragraph about, how well I did at the conference and everything. And it was just so sweet, because I was feeling I'm one hand pumped from this conference. I was very excited for what the future holds, but on the other hand, just super tired.
It's draining.
Yeah. So, to wake up to that, and my whole family's going off about how well everyone did. So Adam and Krista did so well. Brett did so well. Kayla did so well. Everyone's amazing. And it was very encouraging. So yeah, we encourage you to encourage your friends.
Yeah.
Motivate them and celebrate the little things. And I think that's what it is. Celebrating the little things.
I want to jump in here and say all the stuff that Kayla just laid out about the curling of the hair and the lunchbox and all that stuff. The thing is that this comes from a genuine place. This is not fabricated. This is not like mental training where you like train your brain to be happy. This is like Kim's general, genuine outlook on life. Yeah. And the fact that
it's the difference between joy and happiness.
There you go.
It's joy.
She was able to instill that in her kids, who are now not only like sharing it with other people, but helping to instill it in other people. Like, my outlook on life has changed based off of the people I'm surrounded with, and now I can help other people. Like, it matters who you spend your time with. It matters who your friends are. And if that's not a message we've communicated in this podcast, that it matters who's in your friendship pyramid and it matters who you're spending time with, then we haven't done our job. And we'll do better about that. But I think we kind of went into this thinking that you should know that that's important. But I want to make a point right now to reiterate that it matters so, so deeply who you allow to speak into your life and who you allow to influence you. Because it's going to set the tone and intentionality for everything you do, for everything you set your mind to. I'm looking at a stack of books in front of me that I would not have produced if it had not been for the people in my life telling me that I could do that, encouraging me, helping me, editing them, giving me ideas, giving me feedback, designing the cover, all these things. Like, my very first devotional, I printed out my first copy. You know who I took it to? Carissa and Karina. And I said, hey guys, this is what I've been working on. What do you think? And they gave me feedback, and it's better because of it. But it was so important. If I did not have those people in my life and not fostered a relationship with them, I wouldn't have that. It's not like I only want things from them. We have fun and we have genuine times too. And I feel like they also count me as a friend, not just as someone that they, teach or help or whatever. So, but your friends are becoming as you're becoming. And if you're not growing together, then it's just going to be so much more difficult. So the elements of communication, of encouragement, motivation, humor, adaptability, all these things that we talked about are so vitally important. And if you're trying to work on all these things at the same time, you're going to get discouraged, I think. So if you took notes during this episode, set yourself a little goal map. Like, okay, I'm going to try to become better at adaptability this week. I'm going to go with their style of communication, and then try to strike up the running joke, and then try to do whatever. You're not going to climb a mountain in a single leap. You gotta take it a little bit at a time. So communication is more than just, this is how I feel about something. That is a huge element to it, but it's such a web that you need to be able to maneuver.
Right. Yep, exactly. I mean, life is just so, you don't know what's coming. There's just a lot of ebbs and flows and ups and downs, and just communication in your friendships is gonna get you through all that. It's not just, this is how I feel about this, let's resolve this conflict. It's everything. It's just sharing the good, sharing the bad, sharing what you anticipate, everything, you know.
Defining your expectations. Is your girls trip just to say that you went on a trip together, or is it to actually build a bond? And if one friend is going with the expectation of just like sharing a room because it's cheaper that way, and the other one is like, oh, we're gonna actually connect and build a friendship on this, you're going in with two different expectations. And that's a communication that needs to be set. And there, we could go, like I said, infinitely long on examples of all this stuff, but for now, this is where we're gonna stop. There's other elements that we had in our notes, but I think this is a good stopping point. So thank you for stopping by this week for episode 19, I believe. And we're looking forward to a great rest of this year of 2024 episodes.
Cannot wait.
Thanks for stopping by this week, you guys. Have a good one.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Friendeavor the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoyed today's content, leave a review and share with a friend. You can find the show notes on our website, www.friendeavor.net, and in the description of this episode.
Friendship is a journey. It's an endeavor. We'll see you next time on Friendeavor.